It's time for another episode of Espresso Yourself with Chuck. And now, coming to the mic, your host, Mr. Chuck Knapp.
I am excited to have Katelyn Loecker with us, Coach Katelyn Loecker, and also former Division I women's basketball player, Katelyn Loecker, and currently regional manager for JAG-K. And Katelyn, would you well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
And secondly, tell us a little bit about the area you're currently covering for JAG-K and some of the programs, obviously McPherson, and we'll get into that here in a bit.
Yeah, I oversee 11 programs within Region 4. So 2 in El Dorado, so 1 at the high school, 1 at the Alternative Center there, 2 at Emporia High School, 2 at Newton High School, 1 at the middle school at Newton Chisholm, 1 at McPherson High School, 2 in Hutchinson at the high school there, and then 1 at the middle school. So 11 total within that area. So
okay, and you haven't been a regional manager for your entire career with
No.
JAG-K, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but you are a McPherson native. Did you grow up in McPherson all the way through? Okay.
So I was born in Nebraska. When I was like 1 year old, we went to Colorado for about 4 years. And so I lived in McPherson since I was about 4 or 5 years old, somewhere around there. And so it basically was my home. So not born there, but raised there all the way through grade school, K through 12. Graduated there, went on to play basketball at Oklahoma State and get my degree. Following that, I went up to University of St. Mary up in Leavenworth for a couple years, coached basketball, got my master's degree, and then had the opportunity to come back home and work alongside, one for JAG-K. We got to start the program there at the high school in 2019, 2020. So right before COVID. So for the probably 3/4 of the year, I had a pretty normal year, and then COVID hit. But then I also got to coach basketball and coach volleyball. So I was kind of a person of many hats that first year back home.
Yes. So let's rewind a little bit and go back to, because I want to talk about basketball.
Yeah.
I want to talk about being a player and a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of your interest in JAG-K, how you got involved with the organization, and a little bit about that job. And so, but going back, very few athletes are able to play Division I sports. Yeah. And so at what point in your career, in your life, did you obviously know that you were pretty good at basketball, but that you really liked it and wanted to go on to the next level?
So I kind of have a short, funny background story. When I was younger, kindergarten through like 2nd grade, growing up, I was always like one of the tallest kids in class. I'm about 6 foot tall. But so anytime I played in a little rec league, I would overshoot the basket because I was so tall. I was like I was too strong or whatever. I was reached out to start playing on a traveling ball team. In 2nd grade, I played a couple years up with the 4th graders. Again, probably a lot due to my height and my size at that time. And I was very, very scared to do that. I did not want to do it initially, but my parents kind of pushed me a little bit and encouraged me and, just try it. And after that moment, I was just, locked on to playing basketball from then on out. And, I would play all the time, whether that was at recess or outside of, practices and games and those things. And then probably in middle school is when I really started to just take it seriously. And partly probably because I had role models that were ahead of me, Marley Gibson, Ashley Sweat. They played at Kansas State University. They were from McPherson. And so I started looking up to our high school players. And if you know McPherson, we are a very basketball rooted community. And so the tradition runs deep. And so seeing them play not just through high school, but also through college, and how I looked up to them, I started to really envision probably in middle school that I wanted to do the same thing. Started to get some college contact actually in middle school, partly because of connections, probably through them and our head coach there at the high school as well. And so then from then on, I just really committed to it. And then in high school, I was very fortunate. Chris Strathman just helped guide me from, freshman all the way through senior year. Well, specifically, I guess junior year is when I committed to play at Oklahoma State, but he just really helped guide me through that process as a player. So,
couple things. Your parents pushed you a little bit.
Yeah.
How long did they have to push you? Because as a parent, you don't want to push your kids too much,
right.
But you also know that you know more than they do, about things like that. So how long did they kind of have to nudge you toward this basketball thing until you started to like it for yourself?
Yeah. Honestly, I think they just really approached it with not like antagonizing, I guess, or forceful. It was more of a, hey, let's just try it. And if you really just don't enjoy it, you don't have to do it, but you never know unless you're going to try. And so I think the approach they had probably just gave me just enough to just say, get over that fear of what I had at that time.
Okay. And you were playing in the summer. So was that when you were fourth grade that you were on the traveling team? And so every summer was just basketball all the time? Well, you played volleyball too, but how'd that all work out?
I didn't play volleyball until 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I did play softball a little bit up until 5th grade, I guess. But when I started playing on that 4th grade team, primarily in the winter, but we'd also play in the summer. And then I ended up starting to play a little closer with my age group, so a grade above me, and also people from my grade level too. And yeah, we'd pretty much play winter, and then we'd also get tournaments in the summer. And so it was definitely a year-round thing for me, but I loved it. It never felt like work. It was just a blast. So.
And tell us about the recruiting process. You said you were contacted in middle school.
Yeah.
But what was that like? You had friends that went to K-State, and how did you pick Oklahoma State? What was the reason behind that? What did that process look like?
So my very first recruiting letter actually came from KU in 6th grade, but I think a lot of it again had to do with the connections in McPherson that, they probably reached out to them. And so they're like, hey, we probably should start getting letters sent out early or whatever. And then K-State, I think, really started to become present in 8th grade. And again, that was probably a lot to do with the connections through Ashley Sweat, Marlies Gibson, and just knowing our coaches in our program and those things there in McPherson. But in regards to like how I handled it, I loved the game so much that I don't feel like I really ever got caught up in it. I honestly wasn't a big fan of the recruitment process because I just wanted to find my home, and then that was what I wanted to do. And so, especially in high school, when I started to really get involved with our AAU basketball program or whatever that I played for our team, that's when a lot of letters started coming through. And basically we sat down again with our head coach, and he kind of helped guide us through that. And I don't think if he would have done that, we would have been very overwhelmed. And he just really established to me of like, what are you looking for? What do you want? And those things. And that helped me kind of navigate the process of, I wanted to stay rather close to home so mom and dad could come watch, because they have always been able to support me through those times and in the games and all those things. So I wanted to stay close to home. I wanted like a family type of atmosphere, a community. I didn't want to go to a school that was in a big city or, again, super far away. And so obviously, KU, K-State, and then Oklahoma State kind of came in the picture, I think like my freshman or sophomore year. And so I started taking visits, but I actually only took 3, and Oklahoma State was my 3rd. And when I went on that campus, it just felt right. And I just think for me, if it feels right, that says something. It felt like the family atmosphere, and it was. The coaches are exactly what I was looking for. And I knew if I was going to find and play for great coaches in regards to good people, they would recruit good people as well. And then Oklahoma State in general, like Stillwater, the community reminded me a lot of McPherson. just like tight knit. I love the loyal and true piece as well. And so it just kind of checked all the boxes for me. It was only 2.5 hours down the road, so mom and dad were able to make most of my games, even though they were traveling late at night sometimes too. So, yeah.
When did you commit to Oklahoma State?
I committed my junior year. So I actually went on a visit to Oklahoma State 2 weeks prior to the plane crash of Coach Budke, Coach Cerna. So I had just met them. I loved it. I fell in love with the school, fell in love with the staff, and the plane crash happened. I was actually informed. I got pulled out of my English class and by our head coach and one of the assistants to inform me. And so that was really hard. And so I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue to try and pursue to go there. But the staff there did a really great job of just making sure they maintained their recruits and like kept those relationships going. And so it just, again, it continued to still feel right. And so I committed, and I think I verbally committed about halfway through my junior year. So,
right.
Yeah.
So tell us about your high school career. I mean, clearly you're a very good player. You were being recruited by Division I teams, committed to a Division I team. So tell us a little bit about McPherson Bullpup basketball and some of the highlights of your high school career for McPherson High.
Yeah. I think what's really special about McPherson is you get to play with people that you grew up playing with. You know, if you at least started, kindergarten or elementary school, you're playing with those same people all the way through high school. And so the girls that we ended up winning state my junior year of high school, and the team the group of girls that we won with was the team that I primarily played with through elementary and middle school. And so I think that is really special. Is you're not, I think it's a little different in like a city, everyone's playing on different teams throughout the off season. And then, they come together during the season, but McPherson, you're playing with them all year round. Those are the people you hang out with all the time. So they really just kind of become like a second family to you. And then just the support. I loved playing in the Roundhouse. It's like one of the most unique gyms in the state of Kansas. Our support and, from our fans and at that time, our student sections were just like flooded with students. Our band is amazing to this day. They're amazing. The coaches, everything. So it was just like a really tight knit group. I remember like after games, I'd always go up to fans, specific ones I built really close relationships with. And I remember always going up to them and giving them hugs, and, they'd say good job and those things, but just really special. So
at that time, maybe junior, senior year, obviously basketball was going to be in your immediate future, but what were you thinking about long term, like your career path? What were you thinking about that?
That's kind of, long story short, that's part of why I loved JAG-K prior to working for this organization, because when I was younger, basketball was my whole world, and then I was like, well, what else am I going to do? So then I just kind of stuck on, well, I'll just be a coach. I'll just coach college basketball, and that's what I'll do. And so, well, that was interesting, navigating what the heck I was going to pursue as a degree or, major in, because I just wasn't completely 100% sure. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in health education promotion, emphasis in health and exercise, sports management minor, and those things. And so I was like, well, I'll just end up coaching. And so that's, I did that a couple of years after graduating. And I just realized I didn't want that to be my entire life, because it felt like that at times. Because not only are you coaching, you're at the school and you're there for your athletes, but you're recruiting and you're constantly, it's just nonstop. And so I think that's what kind of led me back to the high school level. Also, I feel like at the high school level, specifically with basketball, the kids just really love the game. It just doesn't feel quite like a job like it can at the college level. But what led me to JAG was through those couple years of coaching college basketball, I learned that I loved working with youth, and I really felt like, a lot of young people, even at the college level, don't really know what they want to do with their lives. But I also just love the idea of supporting youth in whatever obstacles they're facing to overcome those, chase those dreams and goals that, they can achieve in those things. So that's what led me to JAG-K specifically. I think it was more of my why that I was searching for versus just a career, if that makes sense, or just a job.
So when you were a player, did you think, and I you had great coaches, I'm sure, at Oklahoma State, but were you thinking, if I'm a coach someday, this is how I would coach my players? Or, if I could do something different, or if I was, helping youth in some other way? Did your time as a player help form what you thought you would do if you were in a teaching position or a coaching position?
Yeah, I think it definitely, you kind of pull pieces like, hey, this coach does this. I really like this. I would want to implement that if I was a coach or a teacher. And I had so many great coaches that I feel like you kind of pull pieces from all of them and you kind of mold into your own type of philosophy. And I feel like a lot of what I learned through those people is honestly what I implemented into my own classroom when I was a career specialist as well.
When you were a coach, did you teach a class also, or were you 100% coach? And
yeah,
I mean, I know that that's a 24/7 job, but some colleges, they have their coaches also, teach a class or something.
I was fortunate that I just was able to coach for that time. So I was able to put all my focus on that. Now I know there was conversation if I was to continue that would have been a possibility, especially at the NAI levels. A lot of coaches do teach a class of some sort. So.
Was it your first or second year as a coach that you thought, I think maybe high school is where I would rather be?
I probably more second year, but I think I definitely was just debating that through those 2 years, just really kind of reflecting on, is this what I want to do? Because I've always said I love basketball and I've always wanted it to be part of my life, but I always also said I didn't want it to be my whole life, and that's where I was kind of starting to feel like it was all I did. I just feel like there's just so much more to do out there in this world than just maybe a sport. So
when you talk to young people about career exploration and kind of setting their path, a couple of questions. One, for athletes specifically, what advice would you give them during the recruitment process? And now that is completely different with NIL and all of the transfer portal and all of that. But and then secondly, how do you decide what's important for you? You had mentioned balance. Maybe I'll go to the first question, recruiting process, but then I want to go to the career exploration and see what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's easy as a person getting recruited, a young person, to get caught up in all the bells and whistles that a program is trying to sell you. Whether that's, all the cool gear, the facilities, the flights, the vacations, or, travel, those things. I think it's easy to get caught up in some of that stuff. And a piece of advice I would tell a young athlete looking to play in college is you need to find good people. That would be the first thing, is who are you going to be playing for? Who are you going to be playing with? What does the support look like academically? Do you have people in your corner that are going to support you through the academic piece? Because ultimately that's what's most important. But I'd definitely start there, because eventually the shiny parts of recruiting start, it wears off when you get there and you're in the root of all the working out or the workouts and just the grind of it. It just becomes another, like a material thing that eventually the excitement kind of wears off. And so you got to find good people to surround yourself with. And then I would also say, don't just go to a school just to go to that school to play sports. Definitely need to look into what do they offer educationally. Do they have the degree that you're actually interested in? Do they have a couple of the degree plans that you might be interested in? Because you might start on one path and then switch gears to another. So
is there anything they can do as a young person? And maybe that's it, but you said, at first I wanted to coach, and then you realized it was more about the why.
Yeah.
And so how does a young person prepare for that, if at all? And maybe it's just they listen to this interview and they say, oh, I need to focus on the why. But are there other tangible things? Or what, when you were a career specialist, how did you counsel your students on that phase of their life and trying to initially start down a career path, knowing that it can change because you may have other interests later, or you may not like it as much as you thought? What's some of the advice you've given your students in exploring careers and job opportunities?
I think I always first would start with their interests and what gave them joy and pure happiness and those things, because if there was something there, typically you could lead that into, well, have you considered these types of career type of options? Because you're going to be able to fulfill that joy that you get out of serving others, or maybe you really have joy out of working with your hands. Okay, let's look at these careers. So for me, it was always people. I always loved being around people and serving people. And so again, that kind of led me to where I'm at now. So I would always start with like their interests. What are their passions? What excites them? Because I think if you start there, you can really find a good career that's going to line up with what you want to do.
Right now, so you're working with your high school coach. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what was that like to come back as an assistant coach and being in your alma mater? I'm sure there are great things with that, but are there also challenges? Just tell us about that experience.
So Coach Chris Strathman, him and I have had a phenomenal relationship since as long as I can remember. I remember when I was like in elementary school or maybe early middle school, he'd come to our games. I'd get so nervous that Coach Strathman's in the stands, but he really just develops trusting relationships, through honesty, accountability, those kinds of things. And so when he had reached out about an opening on his staff, it was an easy yes. Just because I knew I could trust him. He's always been one of my biggest mentors in my life, and kind of like another father figure. I feel like my dad is amazing. I love him to death. We have a wonderful relationship, and I feel like I have several of those awesome father type of figures, and he was always one of them. What I've really respected about Coach Strathman is he has allowed me to coach. Like he doesn't micromanage. He just trusts that I will do my job and I will help and support in any way that I can. He values my opinion. Although I played for him, he doesn't look to me he values anything I have for input, if that makes sense. And so I really appreciate that. And then I don't remember what other part of the question was. Was there anything else that
I know there had to be good parts about coming back to your alma mater, but have there been any challenges? I mean, and you won't say this, but you're a local legend in McPherson, and there are a lot of people that on the men's and women's side of McPherson basketball because of the storied history, but you not only excelled as an athlete, but as a person, a student, because I know whenever I see, maybe not every time, but just about every time I see our state education commissioner, Randy Watson, he's talking about how great Katelyn Loecker is. So what's it been like going back and working in, and I know you're not there day to day now, but you're still coaching there, and what has that been like? And were there any challenges? Because a lot of people know who you are, and is there a certain expectation or even pressure coming back?
I'll go back to just getting to work alongside Strath and the other coaches, and then being able to come back and work with the players has been just, I think, one of my favorite parts, especially because, you were once in their shoes. So you can, if there's struggles they're going through, you went through the same struggles. So you can really relate. And just, again, fostering those relationships has been one of the most awesome things. And just building that trust with those players that they can come to you when they need help. Challenges, yeah, there's that pressure, but ultimately I think I try to keep in the back of my mind is, what is your why? Why are you here? And ultimately, yeah, it's to coach these girls and hopefully win games and those kinds of things. But my why is to help serve them, to mold them into great young women that they can go out and do awesome things with their lives. So, there are going to be wins and losses. That just comes with the territory of coaching, with that pressure, I guess. But I think a lot of the good definitely outweighs the challenges. So, but yeah.
So now you're a manager and not in the classroom every day,
yeah,
which eliminates some of the day-to-day opportunity to help, mold the students, if you will. But what are some of hopefully there are some advantages. What are some of the positives of being a manager, and how have you been able to take the lessons you learned as a coach, as a player, maybe to your management position?
Yeah. So I have really enjoyed, just getting to see all of our specialists and how they implement their own skills, knowledge, and experience into their programs. Because there's, just like coaching in sports, there's a million different ways you can do it and still have success at the end. And so I feel like I've learned so much from the specialists and how they accommodate their students. And I feel like I'll pull some ideas from one and I'll hopefully share it with another and try to say, hey, so-and-so did this, and Emporia, you should look into, trying to do this in your program because they might be struggling in a certain area or whatever. And something I actually did, we're doing evaluation now and offer just an opportunity for us to have dialogue of, what are things that you feel like you are a strength of yours? Okay, what are some areas that you want to get better at for next year? And so we'll have those conversations, and then hopefully can coach them through that. Well, have you thought about doing this, or this? I've seen this specialist implement these type of strategies for classroom management and those things. So again, it's a lot like coaching. You're pulling, things that you notice or like from maybe other people, and then just sharing that out with the team. So
3 more questions. First one, what would you consider your greatest accomplishment to this point in your life?
I think definitely impacting young people. Before JAG, I probably would have said making it through playing college basketball, because it was an awesome experience, but it's very challenging at the same time. But I think now just, I would say really just making an impact in helping young people change the trajectory of their lives. It just reassures me, like, you have been doing your why and have done your why. And so I definitely say that.
And maybe I should have done this in reverse order, but what's been the greatest challenge to this point?
In my whole life?
Yes.
Oh, I could probably say a few.
One of the greatest.
Yeah. Well, I would say when I was coaching at the University of St. Mary, I actually was a head coach for a year at the age of 23. That was a big challenge, because you have athletes that are either a year younger than you or just about your age. And you're trying to develop positive professional relationships. You're trying to get buy-in from these people, these young people. You're changing things of how things had been. And so a lot of moving parts that brought on some challenges.
And then finally, and thank you for spending time with me today, The name of the show is Espresso Yourself. So how do you espresso yourself outside of your job or coaching? What are some of your hobbies or outside interests?
I love to lift and work out and run or walk. I love to get outside. I actually really like to garden, but I don't, or like plant flowers and those kinds of things, but I just haven't done it recently. Like this year or last year, it's just a lot going on, but I really like to do that. I love to read. And I love to go to church and just serve, our Heavenly Father. And that's a big part of who I am as well. So.
Great. Well, thank you for being part of our JAGK family. And thank you so much for spending some time and sharing some wisdom with us on this episode of Espresso Yourself with Chuck.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Chuck.
Thanks for watching Espresso Yourself with Chuck. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notified of any new episodes of Espresso Yourself with Chuck or other videos with our JAGK program. Thank you.